Afternoon, everyone. I see people trickling in a little slow this afternoon, but I'm going to go ahead and get started. So we just can be mindful of everybody's time. Thank you for joining us today for this campus conversation, focusing on CMU counseling. This event is going to be recorded, as you probably just heard that speaker. We like to send the recordings to everyone that registered. So that they can reference these later. Sometimes things come up and not everyone's able to attend always, so that we find this very helpful. We can also share it with other alumni and donors in the future if that's needed. Additionally, when I send this recording to everybody, I will include the slides as well as a brief survey if you don't mind completing that. It just helps us make positive improvements to our virtual events. I'm Allison Smalley. I work in the advancement office here at CMU on campus. A couple of housekeeping items. We're going to keep everyone muted throughout the presentation just to help with feedback issues. Additionally, if you have a question or a comment, please feel free to use the chat or the raise your hand function. We want to make this as much of a conversation as you would like it to be. Additionally, if you would like to turn on your cameras, we would love that. We also understand that it is lunchtime. So we do have, I know some people are enjoying their lunches while they're tuning in. So I'm going to go ahead and turn over the microphone to Dean Paula Lancaster.
Okay, thank you so much, Allison. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our campus conversations with Drs. Sherry Pickover and Alan Armbruster. We're very grateful for you all being here with us today. And we also want to extend a special thank you to folks who weren't able to make it, but we know will be listening in later. We're going to have great information to share with all of you today. And I really appreciate these campus conversations because it's an opportunity for us to share with our alumni and friends the great work that's happening on our campus. And quite frankly, I learn something every time because as much as I'm aware of the amazing work that our faculty are doing, just hearing them talk a little bit more in detail makes me that much smarter about their programs and what's happening in their fields. So I just so appreciate this time. I am in particular looking forward to today's conversation, which is focused on mental health in the communities and schools, and specifically on our counseling programs. Obviously, these are topics of critical importance. And we are so fortunate today to be joined by two people with deep knowledge and expertise in this area. So I frankly would like to get to it as quickly as possible. As Allison said, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand, unmute so that we can have a conversation. But I want to thank Drs. Pickover and Armbruster for joining us today. They both serve as esteemed professors in our counseling program and truly leaders across the state. So I wonder if the two of you could take a moment to just share a little bit about your background, and then we'll get into the conversation.
Sure. Actually, I'm going to have Dr. Armbruster go first. We'll do alphabetical. That'll help.
Okay, I'll start. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here and welcome. I am Dr. Ellen Armbruster. I have been at CMU for 11 years now. It's hard to believe that. I coordinate the school counseling program here, but I'm actually a dual track person. I worked as in a clinical mental health program prior at another institution before becoming here. But here I focus on school counseling, and that's what I will be talking to you about today. I was a school counselor as well as a clinical counselor, but as a school counselor, I practiced in a different state in the southwestern part of the United States. And I worked primarily with Latinx kids. So some of them were originally from the US, and many of them, maybe 50%, were actually from families who had come to the US from places south of the border. So I had the joy and the privilege of working with that population. And in that capacity, I learned how important it is for school counselors to address the needs of every single student. And as I'll be telling you later, the ASCA model helps us to do that. So I will stop there.
Thank you. Yes,
Thank you.
Sherry.
Yeah, I'm Sherry Pickover. I've been with CMU 6 years, and in higher ed 20. Is at another university. And so my background is primarily working with children and families. I tell people the youngest I ever did therapy with was 2 years old, and the oldest was 80. So my background is primarily doing family therapy, individual therapy, attachment work, trauma work. It was primarily in child welfare. And then I ran a free clinic in Detroit for about 14 years as part of the university I was working at there. So a lot of clinical background and a lot of focus on attachment and trauma, which is, I never expected it to be so relevant considering what everyone's been dealing with the last 4 years.
Okay, great. Well, thank you again. Thank you both for being here and for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us. And I know that you have some specific information that speaks to trends and issues in the mental health arena. And so please do take the floor and share that with us. And I'm going to mute and also use the chat and hand raising when I have questions or clarifications too. But please do go ahead and take it away.
Well, thank you. I'm having a little issue. There we go. Getting the slideshow started because it was blocking the Zoom, piece blocks where you can do that. So can everybody see everything? Okay. I hope. Just give me a thumbs up. Thank you. So we're just going to start. We introduced ourselves. Ellen and I are both professors in the counseling program. And I was just going to start to talk about mental health in the community. And one of the biggest issues is a lack of access. So what we're seeing right now, what was interesting. Yeah.
Just sorry, we are seeing your notes view.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
I don't know how to fix that. It's doing closed caption. Is that why you're seeing the notes view?
Not sure.
We also see the slide that's coming up.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry. I don't know why it did that.
Okay.
It's okay.
It's
It's not a problem for me, and I bet it's not a problem for most people. Go right ahead, Sherry.
Yeah.
I'm gonna turn that off for a second, seeing if I can turn it off. There we go. Did it disappear?
It did.
Okay, so I'm gonna try one more time. I'm just gonna try to share. This is what happens when I use a small screen. I'm used to a very large one, and I usually don't have the large one. So I'm just going to try again.
Sure.
So it sounds like it's still sort of doing that. So yeah, thank you. I'm just going to go ahead and go on.
Sounds good.
Okay, thanks. So talking about lack of access, right? So what's happened since the years of the pandemic, I sort of talk about the silver lining, if there was one, to the pandemic. And what it did was really demonstrate the serious need. I actually think the need was always there. It exploded, but it showed the incredible need of people to have access to good mental health care. And so one of the things that happened was there was the reason for lack of access is one of them is lack of mental health professionals. I'm going to give you a little bit of statistics as we move forward, but I focused on Michigan, and there are what I refer to as deserts. There's just deserts in this state where literally no one has any access to a psychiatrist, to somebody who specializes in substance use treatment, or to any kind of mental health professional. And then the other, so that's a serious concern. And then you add a layer that there's not access to people who specialize in helping children and families. I actually found that out. I mean, I sort of knew it internally. We have the director of Isabel County CMH. She's on our advisory council and constantly talks about the fact that they just aren't, she can't get people trained to work with children or willing to work with children. And a student of mine was looking for a place to send her child, and there were 4 registered play therapists from Lansing up through the UP in the entire area. So the current mental health needs, what's really struggling right now is anxiety, coupled with depression and post-traumatic stress disorder. Just lots of trauma in children from what happened when the schools closed, trauma from the pandemic, trauma exacerbated by the pandemic that already existed. And again, yeah, please, if someone has questions while I'm going, feel free to either interrupt me or put it in the chat. So what we know right now, this is 56% of adults with mental health or mental illness receive no treatment. And that's mostly because they don't have access to it, both from insurance, ability to pay, and no local service providers. Michigan has 866,000 people untreated and estimated. It has 74,000 youth untreated and 6% with healthcare insurance that has no coverage despite mental health parity laws. So a lot of what this plays into is people being unable to access it. Then if they do access it, they can't afford the copays because they're excessive. So they have to wait to get the service until their copay or they meet their deductible. And then when it resets the following year, they have to stop until they're able to do it again. That happens a great deal in private practice. So you have this lot of starting and stopping and lack of continuity. And so we all know Michigan has mental health deserts with no access to any kind of mental health services. Those are all primarily in rural areas, Lansing and north. So the common concerns, like I said, are anxiety, so panic attacks, phobias. Really, we're seeing a lot of anxiety that's becoming crippling, right? An inability to move beyond it, that the amount of anxiety is so uncomfortable that it's holding people back from being able to be successful. We're seeing lots of depression, where you see lack of energy, hopelessness, helplessness, suicide rates, are up across the board. Because again, we don't have access. The stigma is still pretty strong. We'd like to think it's getting better. It really isn't. I think sometimes it's a false sense of getting better because we're talking about it more. But one of the best examples I can always find is when I teach in a counseling program, and often students will say, well, I'm not going to go get mental health help because of the stigma. And I go, so you're training to be a mental health professional who will not get mental health help. That's how serious the stigma is. And go ahead. Well, I thought somebody had a question. And then post-traumatic stress disorder, which is, you see lots of hypervigilance. And one of the key pieces to PTSD is that people just can't feel safe and never know when something's going to happen. So as a result, they withdraw from the world, really, in order to make sure that they're not exposed to something that will cause extreme discomfort and suffering. So I'm going to talk about what we're doing in the counseling program to address this. I think that one of the biggest things we did to address this, and I really want to, I'm so glad I'm doing this, Dr. Armbruster, because she was ahead of the curve back in 2018, kept saying our program should go online, and she was right. We went online in the fall of 2021 to have a more inclusive program so that we could increase access, because where the deserts are the UP, Northern Michigan, and we were the northernmost program. So people would have to drive 2-3 hours to become educated. And then they couldn't access supervision and they couldn't access sites. So by going online, we've been able to serve, to be a service provider and train people to be counselors in those areas, and they get to stay in their communities. So that's really wonderful too.
Uh-oh. Did we lose you, Sherry?
I think we did, but it
Okay.
looks like Ellen's Ellen, are you can still hear us? Sherry's frozen. So,
Lovely technology, no matter how much we use
yes.
it. There's some things you just
So Allison, should we have you, or Ellen, should we have you kind of jump forward and then we can always come back and pick up where we left off? Great, thank you.
Oh, you're
go to
muted.
mute.
Would you like to share your screen with the PowerPoint, Ellen? Or do you
Why
want
don't
me
I do that? And we'll
Okay.
see if it works in terms of using the presentation mode.
Okay.
Let's see. What are you seeing?
We see,
Role of the school counselor.
yes,
Oh,
just
good.
a
Okay.
small,
Try to see if I can set that up as a slideshow. Current slide. Okay, is that giving you
Yep.
the actual slide? Okay, perfect. All right, so I am going to start by talking a little bit about the role of the school counselor. And this is really important because school counselors have been given a lot of duties that don't really relate to being a school counselor, like being a test coordinator, doing lunch duty or bus duty or those kinds of things. And there are fair share activities we all need to pitch in. But when these get in the way of school counselors actually doing what they're trained for, it can be a problem. So this is just going to be the briefest of overviews about the role of a school counselor. I mentioned the ASCA national model a few minutes ago. ASCA is the American School Counselor Association. And because there were so many non-school counselor duties that were being performed across the nation, ASCA decided to create a national model for what a school counselor does. So to give you just a little bit of an idea of that, the bottom line is that school counselors are tasked to help all students. So not just some, but all students. And they do that by creating a comprehensive school counseling program that has many, many different facets to it. But overall, there are 3 main areas of development for students that we focus on. The first is academic development, and this includes things like planning, development of study skills. Then the social emotional development is critically important, as we just heard Sherry talking about how important it is for kids to have mental health care. And this is where school counselors help students learn about social emotional development and to apply interpersonal skills. And then finally, school counselors focus on career development of students. So their post-secondary options, helping them to think about what they want to do as they grow into adults in society. That could be higher education, it might be the military, it might be the workforce. But as I said, the bottom line is all students are important, and school counselors help every single one of them to graduate ready for a successful life. So there is a problem with this. I mean, it's a great model, and it is something we teach and we send students out into the field to implement. However, there is a major school counselor shortage going on across the nation and very much here in Michigan as well. So according to ASCA, the ideal caseload would be 250 students to every school counselor. Here in Michigan, that's 598. We have 598 students to every school counselor in Michigan. That, by the way, is second to worst in the nation. There's only one state that has more school counselors, more students per school counselor in the nation. The national average is 385 students to one school counselor. So this is obviously a gigantic problem, especially when we think back on what Dr. Pickover was telling us about the lack of access. There are many students whose only access to mental health care would be through their school counselor. So if there is no school counselor, or the school counselor has so many students on their caseload that they can't get to everyone, it means that somebody is getting is slipping through the cracks. Someone is not getting the care that they need, maybe multiple somebodies. So this is a huge problem, especially as we were saying, since the pandemic, issues of anxiety and depression and the trauma even that occurred during the pandemic, all of that has just increased. And so this need is truly great. So just a little bit more about the ratio. So these ratios, it's not a small thing. It's actually a really big deal. And actually, I'm going to start this slide by saying that there actually was a bill introduced by Representative Braybeck that would require schools to employ or contract with at least one school counselor for every 250 students. This, it's not, it has a ways to go, I will say, but I think it is one of the most important issues facing school counselors and school counseling, the profession, because if we don't have enough school counselors, we truly cannot serve the students of our state. And there's been lots of studies done. Smaller ratios are better. It means that there are increases in standardized test scores, increases in attendance of students. Well, they're going to be much more likely to graduate if they attend. And yes, there are increases in graduation rates as well, increases in their GPAs, which of course gives them more choice as to their post-secondary options. Additionally, there's a decrease in disciplinary infractions or problems with behavior when we have more school counselors. Students are much more likely to be able to talk to school counselors if there are more of them, if there are appropriate ratios. It's also really important to remember that students of color and students from low-income families are sometimes hit the hardest in this regard to smaller ratios and have most definitely unequal access to school counselors. So here at CMU, we are doing a couple of things that can directly address this problem. The first I'll mention is the Michigan Earn, Learn, and Serve in Schools grant. We call it MyELSIS. CMU has partnered with the Michigan Department of Education. The grant provides a stipend to school counseling interns. And this is so critical for our students. Our students tend to be adults. Well, they are adults and they tend to have full-time jobs and families and they're just regular adults doing regular adult things in the world. So it is really challenging to stop a job in order to do an internship. So this grant allows for students to leave their jobs or only work part-time so that they can just focus on the work of becoming a school counselor, focus on their internship experience. So they do this, they receive the stipend. And then the year after that, when they graduate, they are then required to go back into the field to provide a year of service as a paid school counselor in a high need school. That's after they graduate. So what we hope, of course, is that they will then stay at those schools and continue serving that population, serving those students and reducing the shortage that we experience here in Michigan. So that's a really important, this is the first year of the grant. It's a 5-year grant, and we're excited to see what that looks like going forward. And then the other thing that we're doing here at CMU, I'm also incredibly excited about, started working on it a couple of years ago. The postgraduate school counseling certificate has just been approved by the academic senate. So we are getting close to being all the way through the curricular process. This certificate provides a pathway for those individuals that already have a master's degree in counseling, so like a degree in clinical counseling or professional counseling. It provides a pathway for those people to become a school counselor in just 2 to 3 semesters. They can do it in 2. If they want to spread it out a little, they can do it in 3. And this is a huge savings of time compared to what it takes to get the entire school counseling degree, which is 2 to 3 years, probably 2.5 to 3 years. So we are hoping that this will really also make a dent in the school counselor shortage here in Michigan. It is a 15 credit hour graduate certificate. So there are 4 school counseling courses and then also a 300-hour internship that they have to do as well. So again, we're just so excited about it. We haven't advertised it all yet, but the word apparently is out because I've had a number of people contact me and say, hey, when is that starting and can I sign up? So we're really hopeful, I hope, fingers crossed, not completely certain yet, but fingers crossed that we'll get to launch it in the fall and just see how that goes. So again, another thing that I think CMU is going to really have an impact on that school counselor shortage that we're experiencing. And again, it's so critical to address given the high need and the lack of access to mental health services. We definitely need school counselors in the state and of course across the nation. So thank you very much. I am going to stop sharing my screen now and see if anybody has any questions because I cannot see anybody while I'm doing the presentation. Anybody have any questions about any of that I might be able to help with?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay.
My name is Aura. I'm from the class of 2013. And I did put in the chat about a grant. And I'm wondering if we could get a program started to support school counselors with ramping up with ASCA so that we can do what's in our role and not do everything else under the sun besides counseling.
Yeah. So, and I think I heard most of what you said. It was a little blurry in there for me. So I just want to repeat, make sure I'm understanding. It sounds like you graduated from CMU and you are working as a school counselor right now. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And you're wondering about how do we manage this issue of school counselors having to do things that are not school counselor duties. Is that right?
Yes, and I would like to receive support to ramp up through ASCA. I don't see many Michigan schools that are ramped up, which means that they have met the requirement through the American School Counselors Association.
Right. So, and you said your name was Aura, right?
Yes, that's correct.
I can't see you on the screen, so just want to make sure I'm getting it right. Yes, and so what Aura is referring to is a RAMP school, which stands for Registered ASCA Model Program. And what that is, it's a sort of an acknowledgement through ASCA, the American School Counselor Association, that your school is is implementing the ASCA national model and is doing all the things using the all of the different tools that are available for the academic, social, emotional, and career development of students. So it sounds, Aura, like you are doing that in your school, and you are wanting to know how to become and get support for being a RAMP school. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, I think that is a great question. And I think that probably a really good thing to do would be to be in touch with the Michigan School Counseling Association about that. There are several people on there who are extremely knowledgeable and have worked at ramp schools or gotten their schools ramped up, as you say, and including, you probably know this, but Terry Torzensky, who was one of the a few years ago, was a national school counselor of the year. Our Michigan school counselor was a national school counselor of the year. She's currently the president of the association. So you are welcome to email me. In fact, I would suggest that you do, and then I can put you in touch directly with her to see if there are any people in the state that are currently focusing on that. I think it is an absolutely wonderful idea to work with other schools and other school counselors together on that process, because it's a big process. It's not an easy thing to do, and it means a lot once you get to be a RAMP school. So would that work for you if I could put you in touch with Terry or others on the MSCA?
Yes, that would be excellent. I would definitely reach out
Okay.
to Miss Berry, and I do have her contact info.
Oh, you do. If you, I think that there's a slide at the end here. Actually, since I stopped sharing, you wouldn't know that. But why don't I put in chat what my email address is, if I can sort of figure out how to do that. I'm not used to Zoom because we're always on WebEx and
I can do it if you'd like
Teams.
me to.
Thank you. That would be so helpful.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. But yes, and I'm so happy. I can't tell you how happy I am to hear your interest in that. You know, there are other schools in other states south of us that have many ramp schools, and we only have a few here in Michigan, but it would be wonderful if your school joined those ranks. What school are you at, Aura?
I'm in Detroit Public Schools.
Ah, wonderful. Wow, that would be absolutely fabulous. Yeah, I'm so glad you're thinking about that. Please do
Yes,
contact
thank
me.
you
I
for
would
that
love to.
information. I would definitely reach out.
Okay, great. Excellent. Thank you. Anybody else have questions or?
I have a question about the MyElsys grant. Is that for everyone? Like, how many students have access to that stipend?
Another excellent question. And so CMU is actually the only school counseling program involved in that grant. There are two other institutions who have school psych programs and two social work programs, but we are the only school counseling program. And so there were a certain number of positions available, and we had to split them among all of the different programs. So we have availability for 6 students per year to participate. Now, at this time, our online program is it's bigger. We have more school students in our online program than we do in our on-campus program. And the way the grant was written, the students are required to stay in Gratiot Isabella RESD. So that's been a little bit of an issue because I have online students that want to participate, but they don't want to drive to the GIRESD to do that. So I've actually been working with the Michigan Health Council, that is the administrator for the grant, to see if we can broaden the regions out to all of Michigan. And they have actually been in touch with MDE, and MDE, as I understand, is in favor of that. But I think there are, I'm sure there are different kinds of processes that have to be gone through to see if that really can happen. So as I understand, the MHC will be meeting with MDE in the middle of the month, and then we will see if maybe we can open this to our online students as well, which I would just love if we could do that. It would be wonderful. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed on that one as well.
Thank you.
Sure.
So I was wondering if we wanted to potentially circle back to Sherry and see if she has any additional information that she was wanting to share before Zoom so abruptly kicked her out. So are there other questions for Ellen before we make that transition? All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Sherry,
Yeah.
I don't recall exactly when we stopped hearing from you, but you probably have a sense for it.
Yeah, and it's so ironic. Right before we started, Allison was saying how like, oh, it's just so many problems with Zoom, and it's just all these issues, and then literally it just said leaving meeting, and then I was gone, and then I could not get back in. Same thing, I had to join via the web. So thank you all for your patience, and thank you, Dr. Armbruster, for jumping in. I was really just talking about, again, what the counseling program was doing to address it. So you heard from the school side, the whole program, both our addiction, clinical, mental health in school, we went online in order to make sure that more people had access to be able to get this training. We initially launched part-time, and then we launched full. So now people can get done in 2 to 2.5 years. We've really excited to announce that we were awarded an Innovative Counselor Education Award for the region by our Regional Association of Counselor Educators and Supervisors. And I think that's because we train our students in telemental health. We're doing things to make them relevant for the way the world is right now. And that's really what our focus is making sure that when they get out, they have the skills they need for the way the world is currently existing. So we train our students in telemental health. We have a fully online program, so we don't require residency, because for many people, they can't give up a week of work. Like they want their vacation. They don't want it to become to school. So we made those decisions to have our courses live online, so that those students can still access the same kind of quality education that you would get if you were in a classroom. But just like we're doing here, this is how we teach. It's a combination program. So those are the things, and we just continue to innovate, continue to look at what's out in the world, offering professional development, doing as much as we can. We are hopeful it'll take a while, but one of the things we were excited to do is we have a faculty on our staff who's a specialist in infant mental health, and so we're going to be working hopefully with him in the next year or so to be creating professional development opportunities for our students to be able to have more specific training in play therapy, in infant mental health, so that they, as they leave, they have access to that. And it's not necessarily going to be programmatic, but it would be non-credit based, so they could access that, hopefully, again, at lesser cost. So that's probably a year, 2 years out, but it's in the planning stages. And so that's kind of all I had of kind of what we're doing.
Sherry, you mentioned the professional development. Could you talk a little bit and maybe a little bit more in detail about some of the professional development that you all have created and that you're offering to counselors, but also to other human service professionals?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So there's kind of two parts of it. Part of us being a KCREP accredited program is we're required to provide professional development to our site supervisors who who provide supervision for our students in practicum and internship. And as that was happening and we had a really robust professional development plan, we would run maybe 2 to 3 a year for our students. At the same time, the state of Michigan passed 2 laws that required very specific training in implicit bias for all healthcare professionals throughout the state and human trafficking training throughout the state. And it happened to coincide with the development of Innovation and Online and them developing a non-credit based platform so that students or individuals in the community who already have licenses would be able to access these trainings without having to pay college credit. So it was kind of a serendipity, right, of coming together. One of our former faculty, unfortunately, he moved on to a different position, but we worked to develop a training in implicit bias that meets the requirements. And we did this in conjunction with the medical school here at CMU. And that's been running now for 2 years, actually, with healthcare. And now we're in the process of being able to put even more content on. The state of Michigan requires an initial 2-hour training and then 1 hour every year of that you're licensed in order to renew your license. The state of Michigan also requires all healthcare professionals to have training in human trafficking. And that training also has very specific objectives and student learning outcomes. And we had been successful in running that as a webinar, and it just went live April 1st. On the non-credit platform, and again in the ability. And so I think that from an entrepreneurial perspective, the other thing the counseling program is doing is really trying to make sure that we reach as many people as possible to help them meet their licensing requirements, but also to have that continuing education that is often expensive or difficult to access. So that's one of the things that we've been greatly involved in and are continuing to be involved in.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. No, I think we sometimes forget the fact that Michigan is a huge state. And I think 80% of our landmass would be like rural communities, often removed from institutions of higher education or places and spaces where they can get access to that. And so what you're providing is invaluable to all of those folks.
Sherry, are those trainings accessible to anyone? Like if someone went to Innovation and Online and they were searching for those, they could access them?
In fact, so the implicit bias was specifically designed, we worked with the medical school, so it's very healthcare focused. It's completely appropriate for anyone who wants to take it, but I've actually had IO reach out and ask me to adjust it for education because a lot of school districts, they're not required to. Ironically, it's healthcare professionals and mental health care professionals, but not educators. But they've been asking for it. So we may be doing some tweaks to it to make it available. And then we've had businesses reach out and ask, can you make this available for our businesses? So probably over the summer, I'll be working with making some edits so that there's different, but it's available to anybody.
Thank you.
Okay. So I have another topic or two, and I'm watching the time and want to be careful about that and also ensure that there's time for folks to ask questions. But you've been talking, both of you have been talking a lot about the work that you're doing now, the efforts to try to address the very, very serious concerns and issues that we see in our state and in our region. And I'd like to also talk a little bit about the future and where you see things going. And you alluded a little bit to that, especially talking about the infant care and infant counseling and working with young children. But specifically, there's an event coming up that celebrates the fact that the counseling program has been training professionals for 65 years. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that celebration and some of the things that maybe, I know you all haven't been here for maybe as long as others, but some of the things that you're particularly proud of, accomplishments that have happened in your time here.
Dr. Armbruster, do you want to go for
Like
it?
a first? Okay, sure. Well, I really am. When I first came here, I mean, I guess we had a school counseling program, but it really was just the professional counseling, and then people took maybe 2 other classes. And since then, it was a 48 credit program. And since then, we have now changed it to a 60 credit program, which of course is the KCREP requirement. And we have 4 designated school counseling program courses, which are far more robust than the original ones were. And the strength of the school counseling graduates that we send out into the field, I think has increased enormously. And so I am super excited about that. Going forward, I think as a teacher, and I started out in the secondary classroom, so I've been a teacher for a long time. And I think as a teacher, you never really stop trying to improve and build and make things even better. So all of those courses will continue. I'm actually working on all of them now for next year. But the other thing that I see going into the future for our school counseling program is about internship. And right now this semester is the first semester that we have all school counseling students in an internship section. And that is just so wonderful because we can focus on school counseling. Well, what I'd like to do is build that so that during the internship experience, students are actually together collecting data, creating creating classroom lessons, presenting them, gathering the data, analyzing it, and sharing it. So it's a whole process. And it would be a little different than you could do in a clinical internship, but I think would just strengthen our school counseling students even more. So that is one thing. And I won't say too much more because I don't want to take up too much time, but I also think that leading into the future, I would like more and more for our students to become educated and involved in professional organizations and legislative issues as well. So for example, I just attended the School Counseling Legislator Education Day, which is a wonderful opportunity to have your voice heard. I referred my students to it in internship, but I would like to build that so that it is just a part of what we do, that we become, as school counselors, advocates for the profession, and that we are constantly focusing in that direction. So again, there's more ideas, but I'm going to stop there so Sherry has time to.
Thank you. Yeah. It's Sherry.
I mean, 65 years is really impressive of a program that certainly has ebbed and flowed, but has staying power. And I think that just speaks to all the people who came before us and their commitment. So I think it's really important to honor that. And that's one of the reasons why, I hesitate to talk too much about the 65th because the person who really spearheaded it isn't here, and it's Dr. Allison Arnacrans. She, I know in another life she'd be an event planner. She's just amazing. And so this was really her push to kind of connect and bring our site supervisors together and alumni together and faculty together and really celebrate. That's a long time to be committed to putting mental health professionals and school counselors and addiction counselors and marriage and family at one time. We were one time marriage and family into the world to help. So we're just really excited about the event. Thank you, Dr. Lancaster, for putting the link in there, because I don't even know if I would have been able to locate it. But it's going to be the graduation weekend. We'll have graduation, and then that Saturday we're going to be having a hooding for our students graduating this year, and then the event. So we are really excited about just to be able to really celebrate that really says a lot. Again, I've only been here 6 years. I can talk about, you know, what we've been able to do in that time, but really it's what the people who came before us were able to do as well, right? That they had to hold, because it's certainly not easy for a program in any day and age, but in today's day and age to have survived as long as this program has survived. I think that obviously accreditation was a hurdle that was incredibly important for us to get over, and we got over it. And the online program is accredited. The Mount Pleasant program is accredited. We're accredited through 2029. It's just a huge strength to know that for the most part, with the exception of 2 states, our students in clinical mental health can be licensed anywhere they go because they have that KCREP degree. So I think those are the things. And actually a lot of school counselors, schools, unfortunately, the Department of Education shift a lot from state to state, a little bit more than licensing. We're working to really shore up our addiction counseling concentration because that need is terrible. We have a great faculty, Dr. Mwangi, is really leading the charge to look at our marketing and make some changes there. So we're really proud of that and really proud of our advisory council, but we just have an amazing faculty. You know, again, Dr. Armbruster is like, let's do a post-grad, and managed to get it done super fast. And, Dr. Arnekred's, what she's doing, Dr. Wangi, just great fixed term people who just jump in. So I would just say where we're going is I'm just really, really proud of what the quality of education we're able to provide.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And, I when you were talking about the people who came before you, the ebb and flow of the program, 65 years, it is truly a long time. And I was thinking back to the beginning of this conversation today, and we're still talking about great needs, shortages, all of those types of things. But then we have been at this work for a long time, and we have provided and supported the state in huge ways here at CMU. I just think about the legacy of all the folks who have, and yours too, which is still being written, all the people that you're training and preparing, all the people that they are going to go out and help and support and lift. And it just continues and continues and continues. And even though the past few years with COVID, with the focus on mental health, with what children and youth have experienced in their schools, violence, all of those types of things, it has been tough and a lot of hard work. But I agree. I think our future in the counseling program is just extremely bright, and we have people who are innovating and who stay in that problem solving mode all the time and can figure out just really unique and interesting yet highly effective ways to solve some of the problems in the field. So thank you for sharing all of your expertise and insights and thoughts. Are there any other questions or comments from the group? And I'll just give you a heads up, Sherry and Ellen, as we wind up, I'm going to ask you for any kind of last, final comments that you want to make too. But any other questions?
If you don't mind, it would be helpful to let our alumni know if there's any way that they can help support these programs initiative and initiative.
Great. Well, we've already spoken to the length of the program, the duration of the program, the amount of time and effort and hours candidates participating in the program, put into and what they're doing. So of course, any support for students is always immensely helpful. But I would also say, and then I'll stop. If you know people in your world who you think would make excellent counselors, please let them know there's a need and we can help them get there. So, okay, on that note, I will turn it over to Sherry and Ellen for any last parting comments and thoughts.
Well, I just want to address what you said, Allison. You had asked me that earlier, and the typical, well, donations are great, but one of the best things our alumni could do is if they're in an agency that's open to taking interns and open to training, the pay it forward. That we really need that. So getting trained as a clinical supervisor and being able to pay that forward and to continue to train. There's an idea of like how do you become immortal, right? And you become immortal in that way that that knowledge that you imparted at one point will continue to reverberate, right, from time and time. And that's one of the ways that I think they can be a best of help, is just continue that process.
Yes, and I completely agree with that. And same goes for school counselors. Are there any school counselors here that are willing to take interns? We're always looking for that, and that's super helpful. Another thing that I really love is when we have alumni who come back and talk to our current students, and our current students love that. And it is so helpful for them. They're just, especially in internship, they're just on the verge of jumping out into the professional world, and they tend to be a little nervous about that. So hearing from someone who graduated from the same program is really exciting for them, and it just makes them feel like they can do it too. So that is a super helpful thing. And then the other thing that I just wanted to mention was speaking up. And again, I focus on school counseling. All of counseling, of course, is important, but speak up for the profession of school counseling. When you have the opportunity to do that, if you have the opportunity to, talk to a legislator, or even, volunteering in a school, helping kids, anything that you can do to benefit kids, I think is an extension of what we're doing here in our school counseling program, and I think supports us as well. And the last thing I wanted to say, because I don't think I mentioned it before, is that the postgraduate certificate, when it is completely approved and ready to go, will be online. So you don't have to be a student in Mount Pleasant. You can be a student in other parts of Michigan or wherever, you live in the state. So so thank you, everyone. And appreciate everybody being here, and appreciate Paula and Sherry as well. And yeah.
Thank you.
Carol,
Sherry, any last comments or, go ahead.
Nope.
Okay.
Thank you, Sherry, Ellen, Dean Lancaster, for taking time out of your day to be a part of this campus conversation and spend some time with us and our alumni. We really appreciate it. And these campus conversations have turned out to be quite successful. And this is our last one of the season. So we've had 20 this year, but we'll be back in the fall for more. So we're looking forward to seeing more from the College of Education. So thank you, everyone. Hopefully the weather turns a little bit nicer and you can enjoy the rest of your week.
Otherwise, we'll all be coming to San Antonio to take
That's
up
right.
some sunshine. Thank you, everyone, for being with us, for constantly supporting us through your interest and efforts and outreach. We so appreciate you all. So thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.